raising the floor. That has been the overall message so far through the Jaguars offseason, raising the floor and building in the draft, right? Building the ceiling, hitting that ceiling in the draft. It's been a lot of gripe in the Jaguars fandom. There's been a lot of complaints, wondering, some naive, a little bit of everything, right? That's what you get during the offseason with a new regime that isn't really doing things the way you think things should be done or what you're accustomed to. Or you have that fear of things just being the same old Jags because of what we've been through in years past. Now, this is my first time actually having a Jaguar-centric podcast. I'm a Jaguars fan for those who didn't know, right? If you do know, welcome. I will try my best to speak on the Jaguars throughout this offseason, but I want to dedicate this episode, off my month hiatus after the Super Bowl of the Eagles and Chiefs. I want to dedicate this strictly to the Jaguar fans, and I want to give my thoughts about what happened in free agency, right, and what's to look forward to in the next few weeks leading up to the draft, right. But before I get into all of that, welcome to the Chill Takes podcast, right? I'm your host, Darian. You can follow me on all major platforms, Chill Takes, Twitter, or now known as X, TikTok, Instagram. Sub to the channel if you're not already sub. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers. Hopefully, by OTAs for all teams, going to give out a lot of free agency coverage for other teams this Monday, and also draft content as well, draft thoughts, predictions, so on and so forth. But just hit some milestones on those platforms: 1K on Twitter, 70K on TikTok. We're still around that 4,000 and plus threshold on Instagram. But if you're also listening to this on Spotify, thank you for following, listening, and also if you're on Apple Music as well, thank you for subscribing, and also rate this show 5 stars. But let's get right into it, man, because like I talked about at the opening of this podcast, man, there's been a lot of mixed reactions in the Jaguars community, in the Jaguars social media. There's been hot takes, there's been a lot of things, man. And I've been on the fence. I've kind of been 50-50 about how things have gone so far. So, I will share my thoughts instead of just tweeting about it, and also discussing it in, these group chats and whatnot. So the Jaguars, James Gladstone, Liam Cohen, Tony Boselli, a lot of first timers this offseason, right? First time, new regime, right? I think the only one that's experienced that we know of that was more than likely handling a lot of this free agency or had an input or with money or whatever was Ethan Woe, assistant general manager, right? But this was James Gladstone. This was his marking, right? This is his time to shine, right? Building a roster for Liam Cohen and the rest of the staff to compete with, right? And of course, I think Liam Cohen had major say so, probably the final say so in free agency, right? I know Anthony Campanelli had his thoughts. The OC Udinsky, I'm sure he had his thoughts as well, but it was more so, a Liam, James, and Tony Boselli thing. Now, when you enter free agency this time in the offseason, right, you have a lot of hope in what your team can do in the offseason, especially if you have money to spend. Now, of course, in years past, we've seen the Jaguars under Trent Baalke and Doug Peterson, and of course, during the Doug Marrone era, spend money, right? It was kind of like spend money one year, not spend anything the following year. Vice versa, flip-flop, right? And, when they spent money, it paid off. When they didn't, it showed, and also they overpaid. We saw that this past year. So entering this offseason, the thought was to be very frugal with the money, but also, given the money you had, you should be able to bring in at least one splash, if you want to call it a splash, game changer. But we'll call it a splash up on the safe side, right? An experience, good to great piece, either on offense or defense, and then you can go bargain shopping for the rest, right? And save the money for whatever you want to do with rookie contracts, and also entering next season with the big cap hits from Trevor Lawrence, Josh Hines Allen, Tyson Campbell, and whoever we pay next year, right? Now, I thought James did the ideal thing. He cut the guys we all wanted to be cut, right? Christian Kirk got traded, all well wishes to him out there in Texas, heading back home. Evan Ingram got released. He found a new home in Denver. Shout out to him and that. I think that'd be a great spot for him. And the rest of the cuts were Brandon Scherf, Ronald Darby, of course, Dearness Johnson, and a lot of the, Letterman, Andre Cisco. Of course, he wasn't retained. Mutual party, I'm quite sure he went to the Jets. That'd be a great fit for Aaron Glenn's defense. And many more. I think you'll want to say at least 12 to 15 cuts, right? None retained. No resigns. No resigns from this year's, players that were able to be resigned, right? So they had around $60 million to spend in free agency. Now, I will name the 9 players. We've been talking a lot about these. I'm quite sure you know every 9 of their names, but you had Dimey Brown from the Commanders, Jordan Lewis. Dimey Brown, wide receiver from the Commanders, Jordan Lewis, nickel corner from the Cowboys, Eric Murray, safety from the Houston Texans, Patrick McCarry, offensive lineman from the Baltimore Ravens, Robert Hensley, center from the Buccaneers, Nick Mullins, backup quarterback from the Minnesota Vikings, Hunter Long, backup tight end from the Rams. I can't pronounce the Cowboys, former Cowboy swing tackle, and the tight end by the last name of Munt. All right, I think his name is Jason Munt, Jonathan Muntz. I gotta look it up real quick. Hold on. Johnny Munt, right? Backup tight end, familiar with the system, so on and so forth, right? Now, to those 9 players, none of those guys scream splash, right? They don't scream splash. They don't really, they're not household names outside of Jordan Lewis, I would say, and Patrick McCarry, if you're a ball watcher, you know what I'm saying? But, those guys don't scream like, they don't scream better in the grand scheme. I like the offensive line haul. I do. I like the potential of Patrick McCarry and Robert Hensley. I do like that, right? He was a backup. He was a starter once upon a time ago in Tampa Bay. He lost his job to the rookie they brought in from Duke, and Graham. He replaced him at center. He had one time a starter last year. He understands the Liam Cohen system. I'm cool with that, right? So out of these 9 players, 5 of them will be starters, right? Or major contributors. Dimey Brown, he'll be wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, depending on how the draft goes and how the development happens on our roster with Parker Washington and whoever else, right? Jordan Lewis, he's your starting nickel. Very surprising pickup, in my opinion, right? Because, I thought Jarian Jones was a slotted nickel guy. Starter. I thought he played really well in the nickel. With the new defense, new coaching, new belief, his versatility, they believe he can play on the outside. I don't believe that, but we'll see. Eric Murray. Terrible signing, in my opinion, right? Terrible. I mean, no disrespect when I talk about these players, by the way, right? I'm just a fan talking ball on this platform, but terrible signing, right? I thought at the age he is, he's not getting any better. I'm not even sure. I guess he brings in that veteran leadership as a backup, but he's more so at this point in his career, a 3rd, 4th string safety, situational safety, special teamer, locker room presence. I guess that's cool, but if he was such a great locker room presence, why didn't D'Amico Ryans, a phenomenal defensive-minded head coach, bring him back? He's cheap. No one was running to the market to sign Eric Murray. No disrespect, but I mean, just call it for what it is. So I'll discuss that more in depth later. But that signing made no sense, especially given the fact that he's going to be a starter, given the money he was paid. Not a fan of that. Patrick McCarry, I like the signing a lot. Ideal signing, versatile guard, one of the most versatile linemen that probably we've seen in this game in the last few years or so. He can play tackle, center, and guard, and he's pretty solid at all of them, right? He's not elite at either one of them. He's just solid all around. He's interchangeable. So if somewhere to go down, you could slide McCarry in and play and possibly, have a rookie take over his spot if somewhere to go down on his offensive line. He's going to be slated as the starting the left or right guard, right? And that's cool. Robert Hensley, understands the system. He's penciled in as a starter center right now. I like it. I like the way he was speaking today at the press conference when he got introduced. You know what I'm saying? Introduced or whatever. I like what I heard from him, and he understands Liam Cohen's system. And he's young, 26 years old. We need a consistent threat or a consistent piece at the center position. Trevor has had 2 centers in the last 2 years. It's not good, right? Nick Mullins, he's pretty much the head coach on the field and the meeting room, the quarterback room, and extra coach for Trevor Lawrence to break down this scheme, this offensive play calling. He will have to interpret for Trevor. He understands it, so he's definitely that just the extra coach for Trevor, and he's a quality backup, right? Better than Matt Jones, in my opinion. Johnny Munt, backup tight end, understands the system. Hunter Long, inline tight end, understands the system, and the swing tackle, just depth, right? But regardless, though, like I said, 5 of these guys, Dimey Brown, Jordan Lewis, Eric Murray, Patrick McCarry, and Robert Hensley will be starters this year coming into week 1 as of right now. Now, James Gladstone says those are floor raisers. I think Jordan Lewis is a floor raiser. Patrick McCarry is a floor raiser. Potentially Robert Hensley. But Dimey Brown and Eric Murray, I don't know. Maybe. I think Dimey Brown has potential, but you could have had those guys and still landed a Paulson Adebo as an outside corner. Javon Holland as a starting safety. Will Fries, extra guard help. Maybe not bring in McCarry. I don't know, man. Those guys weren't that expensive. I know Holland was signed for like $17 million a year. Adebo was signed for $18 million a year. 25 years old. You know, plenty of great football left in them. Those guys are rising, in my opinion. They're not like just even or potentially getting worse after this year, in my opinion. You know, I would like to lean more towards the youth to pair it with guys like this RDO you have on roster. And I don't understand that, right? So it's over and done with now. But what are the pros and cons of having this mentality, as we probably want to see from James Gladstone going forward, especially for this year, right? What does this mean for this year? I think one of the cons, I'll go over the cons first, right? And then I'll say the pros for last. I think the cons in having this 9-man floor raising depth fulfilling free agency haul with $60 million spending for agency, right? You're putting a lot on the draft for a first time front office. Everybody in the front office, some people in the front office and coaching staff, right? Because everyone's going to have input, right? Everyone's going to have their input, right, on what they want. But you're putting a lot of pressure on this new regime that's pretty much new in every single position. New GM, new EVP. First time GM, first time AVP, and first time head coach. It's a lot of pressure, man. That is a lot of pressure with these 10 picks in this year's draft class that you at least need to find 5 to 6 day 1 starters. It's not easy. It's not easy. Now I know, and I'll get into the pros later, how this is a strength of James Gladstone, but he's never done it alone, right? He's had other peers and final say so from people that have done it for 10 plus years in the league. He may have been, I want this guy. He may have got the phone. Yeah, okay. We like Jared Verse. You've been high on Jared Verse? Let's go ahead and do it. You've been high on Puka Nacua? Let's do it, right? I get that for sure, right? But it's different when you're the guy making the pick, but also can you trust, is everyone else giving you legitimate input instead of just saying, oh, yeah, You're the draft genius. Go ahead. It's a lot of pressure on you. I'm not saying that Tony Baselli can't do it. He's been around this game for a long time. I know he has a great eye for trenches and, of course, offensive players. Liam Cohen has a great eye for young talent, offensive players that fit his scheme. I get all that, but it is different when you are starting in the game and not coming off the bench as a six man. You get what I'm saying? So that is one thing. You're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to nail at least 5 to 6 of these 10 picks. All right. You have to get rounds 1 through 4. You have 1 round, 1 second, 2/3, and 1/4. So you have to get at least 5 to 6 of those guys ready to go. All right. That's one con, I would say. The second con, and I'm sorry I'm looking down at my notes when I read this. You're banking on a lot of rookies. Okay. I know in years past and it just made this maybe me just saying that, I haven't seen a lot of impactful rookies, plural, not rookies come through this Jaguars organization. Right. I think 2016 draft is one of the most impactful draft classes in our franchise's history. You bring in Jalen Ramsey, Unique Ngakoue, Miles Jack, right? I forgot who else was in that part of the draft, but that was a really great draft class that, of course, pillared us to the AFC Championship. The 2021 draft class, you can say that is one of the best from a standpoint of the consistent winning we were able to put together, the playoff win, the playoff run, and also, of course, outside of last season, that was, an 18-win class in the last 2 years prior to last year, right? And that's what you like to see, I'm sorry. They were they won 18 games in a span of 4 years. Well, if I'm saying that correctly, I'm sorry. They went 3. They had 3 wins, 9 wins, 9 wins, and 4 wins. So that in that middle, years 2 and 3, they showed consistency in a sense, right? No playoffs, but they were winning, regardless of how it looked, right? But I may be saying this is a con because I don't know if a Jaguar team can depend on so many rookies when everyone says we have the pieces. We were in those 10 games we lost last year. There were 1-score games. We have the pieces. We have Trevor. We have ETN. We have Bigsby. We have BTJ. Of course, he's arguably our best. He's our best player on the team. We have Josh Hines-Allen. We have Trayvon Walker. We have Tyson Campbell and healthy. I mean, we have these pieces. We have Mason Smith, a young guy. We have these pieces. But my counter to that is that we haven't seen enough consistency from these pieces to believe that they can take these rookies under their wing and say, okay, we won 4 games last year. You guys come in. We're going to win at least 7 games, 8 games this year. We haven't seen enough consistency to believe that these pieces currently can help the young guys coming in. And also, we don't have the coaching staff as of right now to believe that they can get the best out of these rookies coming in as well. Because James can draft them, right? He can definitely draft whoever. He can draft the top 100 guys all in within the 4 rounds because of guys falling and whatnot, right? He can put together an amazing draft class, but on paper. But what if the staff can't get the best out of them because they're new? They're new to being a new coach at their set position, right? They don't have enough young talent to rely on if they can't get the best out of this 3rd-round rookie. They don't have a Javon Holland they can rely on for, whatever games this year, or not even a Javon Holland or Jeremy Chin or a Justin Reed. You know what I'm saying? One of these safeties that are reliable and shown consistency throughout this league to be solid at least. They don't have that to rely on if what they're coaching the young guys to do, they're not catching on, but the veterans get it because they've been around the game longer. We don't have that. So you're banking on, or you're relying on these rookies to show up and be ready to go week 1. But you don't have enough consistency from your pieces for all of it to come together to say, okay, this can work. Another con, you're trusting an inexperienced coaching staff to get the best out of the youth. I hate to say it, but you are. You are. I mean, you're saying that your scheme on offense and defense is so damn good. You don't need to go out there and get good players to enhance your scheme. That's how I'm seeing it, you know. And you can call me crazy in the comment section or whatever, but I'm seeing it as James Gladstone and Liam Cohen and the rest of the guys believe that their scheme, what they're doing, their culture is so damn good. They don't need the Paulson Adibos, the Carlton Davises, who was linked to this free agency class for a long time before the day even started. They don't believe that they need those guys per se because they believe they have the guys in place that will work out, that their scheme is going to get the best out of them. And also the guys they have coming in will be better. And we might as well just ride with that. Now, James said something very interesting at the end of his presser. He was asked by Mia O'Brien, shout out to 1010XL. She's a beat writer for them. She asked James pretty much, hey, do you plan on adding any more pieces to this team via free agency, right? Edge 3 or whatever other position you can really upgrade from. And he pretty much said, we could, but we don't want a vet or an older player to get in the way of what we may have coming in with our 10 draft picks. We want our rookies to see playing time. They're going to have every shot to compete and get a job and, be an impact to this team come fall time. And I thought that was very interesting because it's like, oh my God, man. I mean, it sounds like it sounds good, right? It sounds phenomenal. It sounds like it sounds too good to be true in a sense. Because you can look at teams such as the Commanders, what they did this past year. They signed a bunch of, floor raisers. But guess what they have? They have proven coaching on their staff. Dan Quinn, former head coach. Cliff Kingsbury, former head coach. You can say, the Vikings. Excuse me. You can say the Vikings. Kevin O'Connell, first-time head coach. And that's true and all, but, he was a proven play caller for many of years under Sean McVay. Not just one, but many of years in the NFL, right? He had Ed Donnell. I can't pronounce his last name. Former head, DC, came from the Broncos before going to the Vikings. Experience, right? He didn't have a first-time play caller at the DC, right? And even then, and we'll see what happens going forward, Liam, if he needs to make any changes. But those teams, as of recent, that didn't go crazy in free agency prior to with the new regime, they still had enough experience on their staff to say, hey, we want to bring in guys that we can mold. They fit our culture already from what we've seen in this league. And also we'll trust our rookies to come in and make plays and be ready because we trust our staff. And it was easy to believe that at that point in time because those guys had a track record of being proven at other levels. I hate to say it, but this staff is extremely young. I think the average age is around, I want to say 33 or something like that. A lot of first time OC, first time DC, first time head coach, first time general manager, first time EVP. A lot of position coaches, a lot of position coaches. All right, you have some experience at quarterbacks coach, running backs coach, DBs and so on and so forth. But there's no seniority on the staff, and that worries me. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I have something else written in my notes too that I think I've already touched base on. But those are my cons, man. I mean, just putting a lot of pressure on the draft, putting a lot of pressure on these rookies coming in, and trusting your staff a bit too much, in my opinion. But there's pros. there are pros to how things are handled in free agency, right? I think one of the pros for sure, not wasting money. Now, I think that is such a lazy thing to say in a sense because that wasn't my gripe when I was speaking on this on the timeline on my social media platforms. Everyone was taking my what I said out of context. I was saying like, hey, these free agency moves don't really move me in a sense. We didn't get better with these moves. I would still consider us a 4-win team, maybe even less with these moves so far. I mean, you can. It's easy to go from 4 wins to 7 wins, 4 wins to 8 wins, but the moves they made so far, I don't see no upgrades. Now the draft, of course, is on the way, but the free agency moves, from what I'm seeing so far, that 4-win team is going to try back out there and be lesser than or just as good as a 4-win team. All right, so, but you didn't waste any money. I know I was going with that. I was trying to say that everyone was saying that we didn't overpay for players, but I don't think some of these players didn't get overpaid. Like I don't think Jeremy Chin was an overpay. He was a very very great bring in for the Raiders. I don't think Paulson Adebo was an overpay. I don't think Javon Holland was an overpay. The only overpays I may have seen might have been like Will Fries, you know, uh, of course, like Dan Moore, but we weren't in for Dan Moore. We didn't want Dan Moore. He went to the Tennessee Titans as a left tackle, right? But Trayvon Moore, I don't think those were overpays. That's kind of a lazy take. But regardless, though, we didn't waste money on players that may have been getting that would have been seeing a more significant role for years to come because the players we did pay, they're 1-year deals, 2-year deals you can get out of. But you can argue that, you overpaid for a guy that is not good in Eric Murray. Like you overpaid that what no one was going to pay. He would have still been on waiting for that call. Nevertheless, though, you're not wasting money. Another pro would be, I know that sounded so counter of what I'm trying to present, but it is a pro because you're not wasting money, right? You didn't break the bank for any, you didn't overpay, you didn't have the Jags cut, the Jags tax, right? That's what everyone's saying, the Jags tax. However, you're building for the future, right? You're also setting yourself up where you can take significant cap hits from the Trevor deal, the Josh Allen deal, Tyson Campbell deal, the Trayvon Walker deal is going to more than likely come. You won't have problems paying BTJ when the time comes. You won't have problems paying Devin Lloyd if you bring him back, right? If he has a good year, you shouldn't have problems paying him. If you want to bring him back, you shouldn't have problems paying any of these guys, right? Because you didn't go crazy during the 2025 free agency, so you have no guys on the contract pretty much. So this works out. You can be frivolous with your money if you're in position to win in the next 2 years or so, while also still paying big contracts to Trevor, BTJ, and so on, right? So yeah, you're building for the future, but also most importantly, well, outside of the most important part, which I'll get into and I'll break it down just as good as I did the cons, you're going to have more homegrown talent, right? And I think that is good. I think that's 100% good because in years past we have Trent Baalke. It was first round and done, right? It was Trevor Lawrence, ETN, Tyson Campbell, and I'll actually more credit that towards Urban Meyer and his offense or his talent acquisition, right? So I won't even count 2021. That was more so for Urban draft, in my opinion. 2022, right? Trayvon Walker, Devin Lloyd, that's it. All right, the rest of that draft class is boo boo from what I remember. 2023. That was 2023 was Anton Harrison. My mind's running a blank right now, but I can't think of anybody past Anton and Brenton Strange on who was a significant piece in that draft class. Can't think of any other soul. Can't think of a soul. Parker Washington. Yeah, running a blank. Not this past year. BTJ, of course, but after that, keep it in the buck. So pretty much homegrown talent outside of the first round is big, really big, right? We haven't had a homegrown talent in a very long time. So if you're able to, this method going forward of, building through the draft and not spending much in free agency because you trust your draft process, and so be it. I love it. And I like the potential of that, which leads me to my biggest pro, draft expertise. Now, The guy can draft, James Gladstone, from what we've seen. Like I said, I do believe Les Snead and a lot of other guys in that office had, I will always say Les Snead had the final say. James Gladstone was the head scout. He was in the war room. We've seen the draft videos. He's knocked out Kobe Turner, Kobe Durant, Byron Young, Puka Nacua, arguably without question the best draft. That was a 5th-round pick. Kyron Williams, right? More pieces in the trenches that I don't really know the names of, you know what I'm saying? But of course, they were able to, bring in some solid offensive lines and defensive line players this past year. Jared Verse, defensive rookie of the year, right? He fell in the first round, grabbed him up. Brandon Fisk, phenomenal player, right? The Aaron Donald replacement, along with Kobe Turner and the other guys up front. Cameron Kitchens, great safety to bring in, right? So those are all guys drafted without a first round pick, by the way. Must note that. Without a first round pick, and also while being very attentive and well thought out in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, even 5th round. Okay, so I will give him that, man. He has definitely nailed the draft. That is why we brought him in, right? That is what we brought him in the grand scheme. And that's great, right? Is it going to be any different when you don't have the current scouting team you want? Because this is going to be the Trent Baalke scouts in there with him, right? Giving him the draft cards and whatnot. So he have to do even more of a bigger job this offseason, in my opinion, to put together a great draft board, because the scouts they pretty much had are going to be the ones turning in their cards, say, hey, we saw this player, the measurables, This kind of matches up to what you want. We may not see, and I will say this, we may not see the ideal James Gladstone draft until next year. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. If you haven't heard anywhere else, you're going to hear it the first time on this podcast. This may not be the James Gladstone draft that you will want to see because of the draft scouts they currently have in place. Next year, given the full haul of scouts, because they're the Trent Baalke guys right now, right? Next year, you'll see more of a James Gladstone draft. But I still respect him to, he's been speaking really high about it. So I still expect him to be aggressive this class and, nail as many picks as he can. Right. It's still kind of no excuse. So that is the biggest pro, right? You got a draft nerd, respectfully. You're going to bring him in to do his thing, right? He doesn't really care too much about free agency, and he's going about this the same way he did with what they did with the Rams after the championship run. But I think the biggest thing people are missing is that they had championship culture and players to rely on. That is my only thing. Everyone's saying, well, the Rams did it. The Rams did do it. But they had championship pillars and coaching to rely on. Okay? When you lost the OC, another one was coming in. When you lost to DC, another one was coming in. When you wanted to groom, Kobe Turner and Byron Young, guess who was still there? Aaron Donald. When you wanted to groom Puka Nacua, guess who was still there? Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, right? So when you wanted to groom someone like who's the defensive players they brought in, the linebackers and stuff like that, right? I want to no, you didn't have Ramsey. He wasn't around there. So I came to the corners. I came to maybe Kobe Durant may have been there, maybe. So you can say Jalen Ramsey was still hanging around. Maybe not, though. Regardless, though, like they still had championship pillars. Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald, and their culture and coaching. I don't care what no one says. That is definitely meaningful, man. It is meaningful as it comes. So we'll see. All right. We shall see. Now, overall, I am, like I said, how I feel going forward into the draft. I had some solid expectations for the free agency class. They weren't met, right? But now my expectations are extremely high for the draft. And I hate to say that, man, but they are. And I don't want to be that just wishy-washy or, kind of already on the fence with a new time regime and stuff like that. But I hate the fact that I have to use what I've experienced as a Jaguars fan, but I have to. And I'm quite sure if any other team in the NFL was doing this, not named the Jaguars, I'll be questioning it as well. Because why are you going away? Why are you going about things like this? Like, why are you doing it this way? Why? With the 4-win team, I was expecting at least one guy on offense or defense to say, okay, cool. Like they got a guy they can rely on. Anthony Campanelli has a corner or safety he can rely on in the scheme. But no, man, no. It's gonna be rookies and a bunch of guys that won 4 games last year. And you can't even say they won 9 games because a lot of those guys aren't here either that won 9 games a few years ago, right? So it's just, yeah, man. So we'll see. We'll see. Holding out hope for sure. I'm not giving up at all. But this free agency 2025 was a bit disappointing. I won't lie to you. But anyways, man, that'll do it. I'll give my draft predictions and overall feeling about this staff going forward. In future videos, I'll drop a season outlook, including the draft. Off-season outlook, including the draft, and how things should go going forward. Probably closer to like around that April 1st time. So in the next few weeks, I'll start gathering, my opinions on teams and what they should do with the draft. I'll also do a bigger free agency recap on Monday because I do believe some more players will get signed this weekend. You may see a Cooper Cup deal. You may see the Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs, and those players of the world get signed. It's all this weekend. Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. I'm pretty sure they'll have contracts by the end of this week. So we'll see where they go, and I'll save that video for Monday. We'll do a total free agency recap. But anyways, man, thank y'all so much for tapping in. As always, you can follow me on all major platforms: X, Instagram, TikTok, Chilla Takes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Leave your comments down below, man. If you're a Jaguars fan, let me know your thoughts about what happened in free agency. Are you for what happened with James Gladstone? Are you against it? Are you in between? 50-50? Holding out hope? Let me know in the comment section down below. And also, if you listen to Spotify, thank y'all for listening. Rate the show if you can. Drop comments, and also on Apple Podcasts as well. But until next time, thank y'all so much for tuning in. That is a wrap.